I want to ask you something. Have you ever listened to someone speak in English? A colleague, a friend, a person in a meeting or on a podcast? And they said something, and even though you understood every word, you still weren't totally sure whether they were just sharing an opinion or whether they were absolutely, completely, 100% certain about it. Like, was that a fact they just told you? Or was it just their guess? Did they know that for sure? Or were they kind of hoping it was true? If you've ever had that confusion, and I'd be surprised if you haven't, then today's lesson is going to be one of the most useful things you've ever listened to in English. Because today, we are going to talk about certainty, about how English speakers express confidence, about the words, phrases, tones, and patterns that tell you, this person is not guessing. This person knows. This is real, and they are sure of it. Welcome back. My name is Alex, and this is English in Fluency, the channel where we go beyond vocabulary lists and grammar rules and get into the real, living heart of the English language. How it sounds, how it feels, how it works in actual human mouths, in actual human situations. Every lesson on this channel is designed to make you a sharper, more confident, more connected listener. And today's lesson on certainty is one I've been wanting to make for a long time. Because certainty, real certainty, the kind you can hear, is one of the most powerful forces in spoken English. And once you learn to recognize it, once your ear gets tuned to the sounds and signals of a speaker who genuinely knows what they're talking about, you will understand English at a completely different level. Here's the thing about certainty. It's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it. Two people can say the exact same sentence, and one of them sounds completely sure, and the other sounds like they're not convinced themselves. The words are identical, but the certainty, or the lack of it, is completely different. And that difference lives in the pace, the tone, the specific word choices, the structure of the sentence, and sometimes even in what the speaker doesn't say. The absence of hedging, the absence of maybe and I think and probably, that silence is itself a signal. It says, I don't need to soften this, because I know it's true. Today we're going to learn to hear all of that. We're going to follow a set of characters through real-feeling conversations, and at every key moment, I'm going to pause and show you exactly what certainty sounds like and why. By the end of this lesson, you will have a completely new relationship with confident English. You'll hear it differently. You'll understand it differently. And my hope is that you'll also start to use it differently, more accurately, more consciously, in your own speaking and listening. Let me introduce you to the people we're spending time with today. Our main character is a woman named Zara. Zara is 29 years old. She's been learning English for 6 years, and she's good, genuinely good. She works in the communications department of a large healthcare company, which means she's surrounded by English all day. Reports, presentations, client calls, internal meetings. Her listening is strong in most contexts, but she has one persistent problem. When conversations get technical, or when stakes are high, contract discussions, senior management meetings, important client calls, she sometimes loses track of who is certain about what. She hears a lot of confident-sounding language, but she's not always sure which confident statements she should be treating as established facts and which ones she should be questioning. Zara's closest ally at work is a man named Marcus. Marcus is 34, easygoing, and one of those people who has a genuinely reassuring presence. Not because he pretends everything is fine, but because when he says something is fine, he means it. He's careful with his certainty. He doesn't throw it around. And when he does express confidence, people listen. Zara has noticed this about Marcus, and she's been trying to figure out what exactly it is that he does, how he communicates in a way that makes people trust his certainty without question. There's also a character named Diane. Diane is a senior director at Zara's company. She's been in the industry for 20 years, and she speaks with a kind of authority that fills rooms. When Diane says something is true, people write it down. Not because she's loud, she's actually quite soft-spoken, but because she speaks with an absolute precision and economy that signals total mastery. Diane never wastes words. She never over-explains. And she almost never hedges, because she doesn't need to. She knows her field. And the language she uses reflects that knowledge perfectly. And finally, there's a client named Ryan. Ryan is the head of procurement at a pharmaceutical company, and he's the kind of person who uses certainty strategically, sometimes genuinely, sometimes as a negotiating tool. He's good at what he does, and understanding when his certainty is real and when its performance is one of the skills Zara most needs to develop. Because in the professional world, not all expressed certainty is honest. Some of it is confident positioning, and knowing the difference matters. Okay, let's begin. It's a Wednesday morning, and Zara is sitting in a team meeting. Diane is leading the meeting. She's going through the quarterly performance numbers, and she stops at one particular slide, a graph showing a drop in client satisfaction scores over the last 6 weeks. Some of the people in the room look slightly uncomfortable. The numbers aren't terrible, but they're not good. Someone in the room says, a little tentatively, "Could this be a seasonal thing? Like, Q3 tends to be slower anyway, right?" And there's a moment where a couple of people nod, almost hopefully, like they want that to be the answer. And Diane looks at the slide for exactly 1 second. Then she says, "No, this is not seasonal. Our Q3 data for the last 4 years shows consistent scores right through September. This is something different." She moves to the next slide. The drop correlates directly with the rollout of the new ticketing system. That is the source. Now, let's stop right here, because what Diane just did is a masterclass in expressing certainty, and I want to break it apart piece by piece so you can really feel it. First, no, just that. 1 syllable. No softening. No, "I don't think so," or "I'm not sure that's it." Just no. A clean, unqualified no. In English, a short, direct response without hedging is one of the clearest signals of certainty you will ever hear. When someone has to think about whether something is true, they take time. They start with, "well," or "I mean," or "it's possible that." When someone knows the answer immediately and completely, they give it immediately and completely. Diane's no was the sound of someone who had already asked this exact question herself and had already found the answer. Second, this is not seasonal. Not, "I don't think it's seasonal," or "it's probably not a seasonal pattern." This is not seasonal. Present tense, direct, unqualified. The word is, the simple present to be, carries enormous weight in English when used to make a definitive statement. Saying, "this is not," means, "I'm not offering an opinion. I'm stating a fact." The is does that. It transforms the statement from a perspective into a declaration. Third, our Q3 data for the last 4 years shows consistent scores right through September. She didn't just assert something, she backed it up immediately with a specific time frame. 4 years, right through September. The specificity of this is a certainty signal. Vague people say things like usually or historically. Certain people say 4 years and right through September because they've looked at the data. They know the numbers. The specificity is evidence of knowledge, and knowledge is the foundation of genuine certainty. Fourth, that is the source, not that might be contributing, or I believe that's the cause. That is the source. Again, the simple present. The word is, no qualification, no hedging. She has identified the cause, and she is naming it with complete confidence. Now, Zara sits in this meeting, and something clicks for her. She turns to Marcus afterward when they're getting coffee, and she says, "Did you notice how Diane talks? Like, she just says things, without all the I think and maybe that most people use." Marcus smiles a little. He says, "Yeah, Diane doesn't hedge when she knows. The thing is, she only says things that directly when she actually knows. She's not performing confidence. She has it." Zara says, "How do you tell the difference?" And Marcus says, "The specifics. Anyone can say, this is definitely the problem." But Diane said 4 years of data, right through September. She named the exact rollout. That's not posturing. That's someone who has done the work. And Marcus just gave Zara, and gave us, one of the most important keys to understanding genuine certainty in English. It's the specifics. Real certainty almost always comes with specific details. Not just, we've looked at this before, but 4 years of data. Not just something changed, but the rollout of the ticketing system. Specific details are the fingerprints of real knowledge. They're what certainty looks like when it's earned rather than performed. Let's sit with this idea for a moment because it's worth really understanding. In English, there are 2 kinds of confidence. There's the confidence that comes from knowledge, from having done the research, from having the experience, from having thought deeply about something over time. And there's the confidence that comes from personality or style. The kind of person who just sounds sure of everything, regardless of whether they actually know. And here's the thing. At the surface level, these 2 kinds of confidence can sound similar. They both involve direct language, minimal hedging, strong declarative statements. But they differ in one crucial way. The knowledge-based certainty comes with specifics. The personality-based certainty often doesn't. It stays general. It stays broad. It says things like absolutely and 100% and without a doubt. But when you push for details, the details aren't quite there. This is such a useful distinction to carry with you when you're listening to English in professional or important contexts. Before you accept someone's certainty as the final word, ask yourself, is there substance behind this confidence? Are there specifics? Are there details? Or is this the sound of certainty without the foundation of it? Now let's move deeper into Zara's day, because the afternoon brings a situation that pushes her listening skills in a new direction. She has a call scheduled with Ryan, the procurement client. This call is about renewing a service contract, and it's a contract the company really wants to keep. The numbers involved are significant, and Zara has been asked to represent her company on the call along with her manager. Ryan joins the call. He sounds warm, professional, relaxed. After some pleasantries, he gets to the point. He says, "Look, I want to be straight with you. We're genuinely happy with the service. The team has been great. But I have to tell you, we've had other conversations. There are competitors offering similar packages at lower price points, and I'll be honest, it's a compelling case they're making." Now, Zara's job right now, if she's listening well, is not just to track what Ryan is saying, but to notice how he's saying it. Because certainty signals work in both directions. Understanding them helps you know when someone is sure about a positive thing, but they also help you understand when someone is sure about a threat or a constraint. And Ryan, in this short speech, has mixed levels of certainty, and each one matters. We're genuinely happy with the service. The word genuinely is a certainty amplifier. It strengthens the word that follows it. He's not just happy, he's genuinely happy. This is important, and it's sincere. Zara should hear this and think, this is real. He's not just saying it to be polite. The team has been great, direct, no hedge. Great, not pretty good or mostly satisfactory. Great, another genuine positive, expressed with real confidence. Now, but I have to tell you. That phrase, "I have to tell you," is a transition marker that signals something important and direct is coming. It's the verbal equivalent of leaning forward in your chair. When someone says, "I have to tell you," or "I'll be straight with you," or "to be honest," they're signaling, what I'm about to say is real. This is the actual situation. And Zara should perk up, because what comes next is the real content of the call. We've had other conversations. He doesn't say, "I think maybe we could look at other options." He says we've had them. Past tense. Completed action. These conversations have happened. This is not a threat he's dangling as a future possibility. It's a reality he's reporting as a present fact. There are competitors offering similar packages at lower price points. Again, direct, factual, no hedging. Not, "I've heard there might be." There are. Present tense, declarative. He knows this. He has seen proposals. It's a compelling case they're making. And here, listen to this. He doesn't say, "I find it compelling," or "I'm personally convinced." He says, "It's a compelling case." He's attributing the quality to the case itself, not to his own emotional response to it. This is a slightly careful construction. It keeps him a step back. He's describing the situation, not fully committing to his own position yet. This is actually a sophisticated and subtle piece of language, and noticing it is exactly the kind of listening skill we're building today. So what does Zara take away from Ryan's opening? She knows three things with certainty. First, he genuinely likes the service and the team. Second, competitor conversations have actually happened, and real alternative proposals exist. Third, he is not yet committed to leaving, because if he were, he wouldn't be on this call. He's using certainty about the external situation to apply pressure, but his own decision is still open. And the fact that he said, "It's a compelling case they're making," rather than, "I'm going to take that offer," tells a careful listener that the door is still open. After the call, Zara debriefs with her manager. She says, "I think he's not actually going to leave. I think the competitor thing is real. He wasn't lying about that, but he's using it as leverage. Because if he had already decided, he wouldn't be having this conversation with us." Her manager looks at her and says, That's exactly right. Good catch. And Zara thinks, I heard it in the language, in what he said with certainty and what he kept slightly soft. This is powerful listening. Not just receiving information, but understanding the structure of how it's delivered. Certainty language and uncertain language, side by side in the same conversation, telling a story that the speaker may not have intended to reveal quite so clearly. Let's take a step back from the story for a moment and go deeper into the actual vocabulary and grammar of certainty in English. Because I want to make sure you have a clear, practical map of what these signals look like. Not just in the stories we're following, but in any English conversation you encounter. There are several main categories of certainty signals in spoken English, and I want to walk you through each one with examples, so you can start recognizing them the moment they appear. The first category is what we can think of as certainty adverbs. These are single words that amplify or confirm the confidence of a statement. Words like definitely, certainly, absolutely, clearly, obviously, undoubtedly, without question, of course, naturally, and inevitably. When you hear these words, the speaker is not presenting a possibility or an opinion. They are presenting a fact as they understand it, with full confidence. She will definitely be there. This is clearly the better option. You are absolutely right. These words are doing one job. They are making the certainty of the statement explicit and strong. The second category is certainty verb phrases. These are phrases built around verbs that signal knowledge or conviction. I know for a fact. I'm certain that. I'm confident that. I'm sure that. I have no doubt that. There's no question that. It's clear to me that. I can tell you. These phrases are powerful because they attach the certainty to the speaker's own state of knowledge. They're not just saying the thing is true. They're saying, I personally know it to be true. And that personal attestation, that staking of the self on the truth of the statement, is one of the strongest certainty signals in the language. The third category is what I'd call factual framing. This is when speakers position their statements as established facts rather than as opinions or beliefs. Phrases like, the fact is, the truth is, the reality is, what we know is, the data shows, research confirms, the evidence is clear. These are invitations to accept what follows as belonging to the category of fact rather than the category of opinion. And a careful listener will notice that sometimes this framing is fully justified. The speaker has real data or evidence. And sometimes it's a stylistic move to give an opinion the weight of a fact. Watching for the specifics that follow, as Marcus pointed out to Zara, is the way to tell the difference. The fourth category is declarative sentence structure. This is a grammatical signal rather than a lexical one, which makes it a little harder to consciously notice, but once you're aware of it, you'll catch it everywhere. A declarative sentence is a direct, positive, simple statement. This is the answer. She was wrong. We will finish on time. Compare these to their hedged equivalents. I think this might be the answer. She may have been wrong. We should be able to finish on time. The unhedged declarative is a certainty signal in itself. When someone says, we will finish on time, rather than, we should be able to, the absence of the hedge is the message. They're not qualifying. They're stating. The fifth category is what I like to call the certainty of correction. This is when someone corrects something, a misconception, a wrong number, a misremembered fact, with direct, unhedged confidence. We saw this with Diane at the beginning of our story. No, this is not seasonal. The certainty of correction is particularly strong because it requires the speaker to overwrite someone else's statement, which takes conviction. When someone corrects confidently, without apology, and without softening, they are usually doing so because they genuinely know they're right. This is one of the clearest certainty signals you'll encounter. And the sixth category, and this one is subtle but important, is the certainty of brevity. Short answers, delivered without elaboration, often signal high certainty. When someone knows something completely and without doubt, they don't need to explain it at length. The explanation would be for the benefit of someone who isn't sure. A person who is sure just says the thing. Yes? No. It's Thursday. The meeting is at 3. These short, clean, unadorned answers are the sound of someone who isn't working through the question. They already have the answer, and they're just delivering it. Now, let's go back to our characters, because there's a scene coming up that brings several of these categories together in a really interesting way. A few days later, Zara and Marcus are working on a presentation together. A proposal for a new internal initiative they want to pitch to Diane and the senior team. It's important work. They've been on it for 2 weeks, and they've reached the point where they need to decide how to frame the key recommendation. Marcus has a strong view. He says, the recommendation needs to be direct. We need to say, this is the right approach, not we believe this might work, or we think this could be beneficial. We need to say, this is what we're recommending, and here is why it will work. Zara hesitates. She says, but what if they push back? What if we say, this will work, and someone challenges it? And Marcus says, then we explain our evidence. But Zara, if we go in there saying, we think this might work, we're not going to convince anyone, Diane in particular. She hears hedging as a lack of preparation. If you've done the work and you know the answer, say the answer. The certainty in your presentation is a signal to the room that you've earned the right to make this recommendation. Zara takes this in. She says, so it's not about being arrogant, it's about being prepared. And Marcus says, exactly. There is a difference between false confidence and earned confidence. False confidence says, we're sure, without the evidence. Earned confidence says, we're sure, and shows you the evidence. You have the evidence, Zara. You've done the work. Now your language needs to match your preparation. This is such an important distinction, and I want to make sure it really lands. Expressing certainty in English is not about being aggressive or dominant or dismissive of other people's views. When it's genuine, it's actually a form of respect. Respect for the audience's time, respect for the weight of the question, respect for the process of getting to an answer. Saying, I know, when you know, saves everyone time. It moves the conversation forward. It gives the listener something solid to stand on. The challenge, and this is where good listening really earns its keep, is learning to hear the difference between the certainty that's been earned and the certainty that's being performed. And as we've been saying throughout this lesson, the key is usually in the specifics and the evidence that follows. Genuine certainty almost always comes with receipts. It says, I know, and then immediately shows you why it knows. It names the data, the experience, the observation, the concrete detail that grounds the confidence. Performed certainty says, I know, and then either stays vague or pivots quickly to a different point before the lack of evidence becomes apparent. Let's move into another scene, because I want to show you how certainty sounds in a more personal, emotional context, not just in professional settings. Because certainty isn't only for boardrooms and client calls. It lives in friendships and everyday conversations too. And in those contexts, it has a different flavor, a warmer, more human one. Zara is having lunch with a friend outside work, a woman named B, who's known Zara since university. B has been having a rough few months. She's been dealing with a career change that hasn't gone as smoothly as she hoped, and she's been second-guessing herself constantly. She says to Zara, I don't know. Sometimes I think I made the wrong call. Maybe I should have just stayed where I was. I was good at that job. I don't know if I'm good at this new one. And Zara says, without hesitation, without any softening, you are good at it. I've watched you talk about this new work, and your eyes are completely different. You're engaged in a way you never were before. That matters. B looks at her. You think so? And Zara says, I don't think so. I know so. I've known you for 8 years, B. I can tell the difference. Now, what Zara just did here is deeply meaningful, and I want you to feel it in the language. She didn't say, I believe you're probably good at it, or I think you might be happier. She said, you are good at it. Simple present, no hedge, no qualification. And then she backed it up with a specific observation. Your eyes are completely different. You're engaged in a way you never were before. Evidence. Concrete detail, the signature of genuine certainty. And then when Bea asked, you think so? Which is actually an invitation for Zara to soften it, to retreat to an opinion, Zara did something beautiful. She explicitly rejected the hedge. I don't think so. I know so. That phrase, I don't think, I know, is one of the most powerful certainty expressions in everyday English. It says, what I just told you is not an opinion. It's not something I'm hoping is true. It's something I am certain of. And the reason I'm certain is because of real, observed, specific experience. And B hears this. She really hears it. Not just as a nice thing to say, but as a real assessment from someone who knows her. The certainty is the thing that makes it land. Because when someone is uncertain, even when they're trying to be encouraging, it leaves a gap. I think you might be great still has might in it. Still has distance. But I know so. That closes the gap. That puts the speaker's full weight behind the statement. And that weight is what someone like B, in that moment, actually needs. This is the social and emotional power of expressed certainty. In personal relationships, in moments of self-doubt or difficulty, the person who can say, I know this about you, with the weight of real knowledge behind it, offers something that no amount of gentle encouragement can match. Certainty, honestly expressed, is a gift. Let's talk now about one of the most interesting and nuanced areas of certainty in English, which is the difference between absolute certainty and confident certainty. Because in real life, very few things are truly absolute. The earth is round. That's absolute. But most of the things we talk about in daily life are complex, subject to change, dependent on conditions. And yet, confident speakers still manage to convey certainty about them. How? How does someone speak with authority about something that isn't a mathematical fact? The answer is that there are degrees of certainty, and language has ways of expressing all of them with precision. We've talked about absolute certainty. This is true, full stop. But there's also what we might call high confidence, which sounds like, I have every reason to believe this. All the evidence points to this. Based on everything I know, this is the case. I'd be very surprised if it turned out otherwise. These phrases express strong conviction while acknowledging implicitly, not explicitly, that the speaker is working with a version of reality rather than the whole picture. And then there's what we might call professional certainty, the kind that's specific to a field of expertise. When a doctor says, "This medication will reduce your blood pressure," they're expressing professional certainty. They can't guarantee it for every individual, but based on clinical evidence and experience, they are confident enough to state it as a fact rather than a possibility. The same applies when an architect says, "This structure will hold," or when an accountant says, "You'll owe tax on this income," or when a teacher says, "This technique will improve your writing." These people have earned the right to certainty through knowledge and experience, and their language reflects that earned authority. Zara works in communications, and she has her own domain of professional certainty. There are things she knows about messaging and audience engagement that she can state with full confidence. And part of what she's learning through the course of this week, through watching Diane, through talking with Marcus, through her own listening practice, is that using that professional certainty clearly and directly is not arrogance. It's competence. And the people who lead, who earn trust, who get things done, they've learned to say what they know with the confidence it deserves. Let me bring Ryan back into the picture, because I want to show you how certainty works as a strategic tool in negotiation, and how a skilled listener can hear the difference between certainty as honest communication and certainty as technique. A few days after the first call, Ryan has a follow-up conversation with Zara's company. They've prepared a revised proposal. The call starts, and Ryan says, and listen carefully to this, "Look, I'll be direct. We want to stay with you. That part's not in question." Pause. But the numbers have to work. We cannot go into the next fiscal year with the current pricing structure. That's not something I have flexibility on. Now, let's break this apart. We want to stay with you. That part's not in question. This is a certainty signal. Not in question means it is established, it is decided, it is a fact. And in this context, it's reassuring. He's confirming the desire to stay. But then he pivots immediately to the constraint. The numbers have to work. Have to. Not we'd prefer, not we're hoping for, not we'd like to see. Have to. Necessity, not preference. And we cannot go into the next fiscal year with the current pricing structure. Cannot. Impossibility. He's not saying it's difficult or undesirable. He's saying it is not possible. That word cannot is one of the strongest certainty signals in English when used to describe a constraint. It closes the door completely. That's not something I have flexibility on. Again, the certainty of closure. He's not leaving room. He's making clear, on this specific point, the answer is fixed. I have no room to move. Now. Is this real certainty, or is this a negotiating position? Zara is asking herself exactly this question. And here's what she decides. Some of it is real, and some of it is strategic. And the key is in that one sentence at the beginning. We want to stay with you. She believes that part. It was said with warmth, with directness, without any of the careful legal language of the rest of his statement. The pricing constraint might have more flexibility than he's claiming. She's not sure. But the desire to stay? She believes that. And that gives her a foundation to work from. After this call, she talks to Marcus. She says, he said cannot, and not in question, and no flexibility. But I think the we want to stay was the truest thing he said. Marcus nods slowly. He says, why? Zara says, because it was the only thing he said without any kind of negotiating frame around it. Everything else was positioned. The numbers have to work. That's about leverage. But we want to stay with you. He just said it. Simply, like it was obvious. Marcus looks at her. He says, you're getting really good at this. And Zara almost laughs. She says, I've been paying attention. Paying attention. That's it. That's the whole thing. Certainty signals, like all the listening skills we build on this channel, reward attention. They're not hidden. They're not secret. They're right there in the language, in the words people choose and the ones they don't choose, in the direct statements and the qualified ones, in the I know and the I think and the cannot and the should be able to. It's all there, every time, waiting to be heard. And the listener who pays attention, who knows what to listen for, hears so much more than the listener who's just following the general story. Let's do our practice section now. I want to give you several concrete, practical ways to take everything we've discussed today and make it real in your own listening life. These exercises are designed to work with any English audio content you have: podcasts, movies, news programs, YouTube videos, conversations, meetings, whatever is available to you. The first exercise is called certainty spotting, and it works like this. You choose a short piece of audio. Even 5 to 10 minutes is plenty. And as you listen, you focus specifically on certainty language. Every time you hear a certainty signal, a definitely, a I know, a clearly, a this is the answer, a no question, a direct unhedged declarative, you note it. You can pause the audio if you need to, and for each one you catch, you ask yourself, what is this person certain about? Is this based on knowledge, on experience, on data? Or does it feel more like confident posturing? Getting into the habit of asking this question is the core of developing real certainty literacy in English. The second exercise is what I call hedge removal. Take a sentence you've heard, or one you've written or said yourself, that contains hedging language, and rewrite or rephrase it without the hedge. Turn, I think this might be the best approach, into this is the best approach. Feel the difference. Hear the difference. Now ask yourself, in what situations would the hedged version be more appropriate? And in what situations would the direct version serve better? This exercise teaches you the mechanics of certainty language from the inside out by experiencing the difference between having it and not having it. The third exercise is the specifics test. Whenever you hear someone expressing certainty in a high-stakes context, a presentation, a debate, an interview, a negotiation, apply the specifics test. Ask yourself, did this person back up their certainty with specific details? Names, numbers, dates, observed facts, concrete examples? Or did they stay general? If the certainty came with specifics, take it seriously. If it stayed vague, hold it a little more lightly. This exercise will train you to evaluate certainty rather than just receive it. The fourth exercise is certainty mapping. This one is a little more advanced but incredibly powerful. As you listen to a longer conversation, a podcast episode, a meeting recording, a film, try to mentally map which statements were made with high certainty and which were made with lower certainty. By the end of the conversation, you'll have a kind of map of where the speaker's confidence lives and where it doesn't. And that map will tell you a lot. It will show you what the speaker really knows versus what they're still working out, what they're committed to versus what they're open on. This is the listening skill that separates people who follow conversations from people who understand them at their deepest level. And the fifth exercise, the one I want to end with, because it's the most personal, is what I call certainty in your own voice. Take something you know, something you have real experience with, something in your field or your family or your personal history that you understand deeply, and practice saying something about it in English with full earned confidence. No hedges, no I think or probably. Just the thing, stated clearly and directly, backed up by the specific knowledge or experience that gives you the right to say it. How does it feel? Does it feel presumptuous? Too strong? That discomfort, if you feel it, is worth exploring. Because very often, learners of English underexpress their certainty not because they're unsure, but because the language of certainty feels unfamiliar or even arrogant in a second language. Working through that discomfort is part of becoming a fully fluent English speaker. Not just a listener, but a speaker who can say what they know with the weight it deserves. Let's come back to Zara one final time. It's the end of a long week. The Ryan situation has moved forward. A new pricing agreement is being drafted. The internal initiative presentation that she and Marcus built is scheduled for next Thursday, and Zara is sitting at her desk at the end of the day, quietly reviewing her notes from the week. Marcus stops by on his way out. He says, "Good week." Short, direct, certain. Not, "I think it went okay," or "probably a good week," right? Just, "Good week." The brevity is the signal. Zara says, "I feel like I learned something this week that I can't quite explain. Like a new layer of listening." Marcus sits on the edge of the desk for a moment. He says, "What do you mean?" Zara thinks. She says, "I've always listened for what people say. But this week I started listening for how sure they are when they say it. And it changes everything. Like, the same information means different things depending on whether the person who's giving it to you is completely certain or only kind of sure." Marcus is quiet for a second. Then he says, "That's exactly it. That's the whole thing." And the way he says it, quietly, without drama, completely sure, is its own lesson. He's not saying, "I think you might be onto something," or "That sounds about right." He's saying, "That is exactly it. Certain. Confirmed. True." Zara looks at him. She says, "How long did it take you to start hearing it?" And Marcus says, "I still catch myself missing things, but I started really paying attention, maybe 2 years ago. And I think the moment it clicked was when I realized that certainty and uncertainty aren't about personality. They're information. They're part of the message. Just like the words themselves. Just like the words themselves. Certainty is part of the message. It's not decoration. It's not just style. When someone says, "I know," instead of "I think," when someone says, "this is," instead of "this might be," When someone says definitely instead of probably, those choices are telling you something real. They're telling you how solid the ground is, how much to trust what you just heard, how much weight to put on it as you make your own decisions, form your own understanding, move forward in the conversation. And this is the whole lesson. Not just a skill to practice, but a fundamental shift in how you hear language. Moving from a listener who hears the content to a listener who hears the confidence behind the content. Moving from someone who follows what's being said to someone who understands the full truth of how it's being said. You are that listener, or you're becoming that listener, right now, today, by being here and paying this kind of attention. Every episode of this channel, every conversation you bring these skills to, every time you ask yourself, how certain was that person? Instead of just, what did that person say? You are building something real and lasting. A relationship with English that goes all the way down. Before I let you go, I want to make sure you feel the full picture of what we covered today. We followed Zara through a week of high-stakes listening. Meetings with Diane, conversations with Marcus, negotiations with Ryan, lunch with B, and in each situation we identified how certainty sounds and what it tells a careful listener. We went through the 6 main categories of certainty signals in spoken English: certainty adverbs, certainty verb phrases, factual framing, declarative sentence structure, the certainty of correction, and the certainty of brevity. We talked about the difference between earned certainty and performed certainty, and how specifics are the key to telling them apart. We looked at how certainty works emotionally in personal relationships and strategically in professional negotiations. And we gave you 5 practical exercises: certainty spotting, hedge removal, the specifics test, certainty mapping, and certainty in your own voice, to take all of this into your real listening life. This is a lot, and I want you to know, you don't have to master all of it today. Just pick one thing. Pick the one signal or the one exercise that felt most interesting or most useful to you, and bring it with you the next time you listen to English. Just one thing. Let it become familiar, and then come back and add another. That's how real learning works. Gradually, then suddenly. If this lesson gave you something, a new way of hearing, a new word for something you'd already vaguely noticed, a fresh reason to pay attention, please share it. Share it with someone in your life who's working on their English, who wants to go beyond the surface and really understand what they're hearing. English in Fluency exists for exactly these people. For the learners who aren't satisfied with just understanding the words, who want to understand the whole conversation. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss what's coming next. Every lesson is built with care, with real situations, with the kind of attention to detail that makes things actually stick. And there's so much more ahead. On pronunciation, on speaking naturally, on the grammar of real conversation, on all the ways English does things you weren't taught in a classroom. We're going to cover all of it together. This is Alex from English in Fluency. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening this carefully. It matters. And I will see you in the next one. Until then, listen boldly. Listen deeply, and trust what you hear when you really pay attention.